Engage.
Welcome back. We're the 102nd Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time.
We got something super fun tonight.
Yeah, so we're going to do something a little interactive. This is going to give everyone an opportunity to basically create your own Star Trek show. If you've ever been watching Star Trek and thought to yourself, I could make Star Trek better than this. You know, I hear a lot of people on Twitter reacting that way. But so here's your opportunity to put your money where your mouth is and actually pitch your own show with your own characters and your own premise and lay it all out.
Yep. Now, that said, we're not doing like a build a series Bible, I think, unless somebody wants to. This is kind of more like let's pick and choose the fun stuff, you know, like build the crew, pick a ship or the name of the station or whatever it might be. And kind of, you know, think up the cool stuff that'll define it. But it's kind of, it's not like a super deep dive. It's not like homework. It's fun.
Yeah. We actually created a little challenge document that's available at tex-trek.com, our official website, where you can access that and take a look at the Tex-Trek Create a Trek Challenge. Me and Dave have both completed this, and we're actually going to reveal to all of you, as well as to each other, what our Star Trek show ideas would be.
Yes, we have no idea what the other person is going to say. I know that, Fatheree, that you talked at one point about your childhood version of this, which had, like, laser swords and other crazy shit going on in there.
They were holographic. It was a holographic batleth. Holograms and batleths both exist in Star Trek. It's not as crazy as it sounds. But yeah, it was ridiculous. Ridiculous 10-year-old father talking.
And you've occasionally, I think, you heard me like at least muse about like some ideas of like, oh, that would be fun if they did a series about blah blah blah. And I think probably the thing I chose you might have even heard me talk about, but we'll get to that. But I have not been contemplating it as long as you had. Mine is really ironed out in the last 2 days. In fact, even in the last 2 hours, I was still making a few adjustments.
Yeah, just to comment on that, when we first got this idea, it was a conversation that me and Dave were having shortly before Star Trek Discovery Season 2 premiered back in January of 2018 or 19? Well, yeah, 19. So a little over a year ago. We were talking about kind of like if we could create our own ship or with its own crew or mission or something. And I was like, yeah, I like that idea. Maybe we should do that. Maybe we could make a podcast about that. And then I got to thinking about it. And then all of a sudden I got like this idea for like an entire show. And I was like, no, that's what we should do. We should like create our own Star Trek show and let other people share their ideas as well. And a lot of like the stuff that I have now is all stuff that like came to me shortly after we had that conversation. A bunch of like the thoughts, and one thing led to another and led to another. And I haven't changed anything since then, except I've named my characters. They didn't all have names. I kind of just thought of them more as like, characters and not like named people. And I added one detail, and I'm curious if Dave, if you'll be able to pick up the one detail I added.
I assume that this is going to be like you decided to restore Gene Roddenberry's original wish that Betazoids had 4 boobs.
That is not. Was it 4 or 3?
Oh, maybe it's 3. That
or maybe he saw Total Recall. He's like, I can outdo that.
It's like having bigger nacelles.
I will say this. is that a couple things I thought about. Actually, I was kind of worried that Star Trek Picard might ruin some of the ideas I had. They actually used something similar to one of the ideas I had, and I thought about changing it for the purposes of this. I was like, no, I'm gonna stick with it, and maybe even lay out a possibility how it might tie together into Picard.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought too much about how mine fits into the scheme of things, but I do have like a year that it takes place in and stuff like that, so I know roughly where it slots in. Should we tell people, like, this is, we want it to be a really fun, open thing where, like, if you wanted to do a story about, like, a group of time travelers who, everything on the show is time travel through all the Trek eras, you could do that. If you wanted to do a series about, like, a Romulan consulate and all the backstabbing politics that goes on there, you could do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be, pick your crew. If you want to do, basically, like, West Wing on Romulus, you could do that. Or whatever other crazy idea you might have.
Yeah. The short little document that we had just has like the few core things that would have to be in there. And I'm just going to go ahead and list these off real quick.
Yep.
You have to have a title. It's probably going to be Star Trek : something else, but whatever you want to title it. You need a setting, and that can be a starship. It does not have to be a ship. It could be a station. It could be a planet, something else. But give us the setting, and that includes a year. Star Trek is a vast timeline, and to take place in that universe, you need to fit on that timeline somewhere. That should be established. In addition to a title and setting, you will also need a premise. If you had to put it in a couple of sentences or make like an elevator pitch, what is like the basic idea of this show? And also, you need to have characters. We recommend about 7 primary characters. You can do more, you can do less. You can do secondary characters as well. In addition, I did more than 7 primaries. I have a little bit of a larger ensemble cast.
I think
so whatever you want to do.
I think if I poked at it, I would do a little bit more. But right now, I think I'm at 7 or 8 characters, and that's felt pretty comfortable to me. So.
That's a good standard. And then the fifth and final thing you need to have on your Create a Trek challenge response is what happens. Describe your show. Are there specific episode ideas that you can share? Like maybe you have an episode where the first officer gets transformed into a tribble. I don't know, but like whatever your ideas are there any arcs? Is there seasonal arcs, or is there like one big arc? Is your show just kind of like a 6-episode mini-series and then it's done? Just tell us what happens. What are the stories of your show? And that's all the stuff you need. And if you want to reply to us, you can email us at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. You can tweet at us at Tex-Trek. You can tell us on our Facebook page. You can make your own video and submit that. You can make a YouTube video. You can
I want people to make
a podcaster, do it on your podcast, whatever.
I want people to make YouTube videos so they have to embarrass themselves live like I did, or I'm about to.
Well, we're not live. We're pre-recording.
Okay, yeah, they have to embarrass themselves in a video format, I guess.
Or they could do it live. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Oh, man.
So, I think that's all the basic setups out of the way. I think, Dave, we should just jump into this. And we've decided that Dave will go first.
Yeah, I was not wild about this at all because, Father, you've plotted yours for like a year. And then prior to that, you've been thinking off and on more about this since your childhood, I think. Whereas I was purely a poser, and anytime I've ever thought about it, it's about the same level of depth of like, what if they did West Wing on Romulus? That'd be kind of cool. And then that's it. That's as far as I've gone.
Well, you keep bringing that up. It makes me wonder if that is your actual show.
It is by no means my actual show. I am ready with it when you are, and you ask me some questions and help me prompt me through it as I go through.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the title. What are we going to call this bad boy?
All right. So we are going to call this show Star Trek, and this is a name, Star Trek Gesenius. But it could also be called Star Trek Gordon Space if I wanted to. Gesenius is the name of the ship, and I'm naming it for Jan Gesenius, a 16th century Czech physician, politician, and philosopher.
Okay, that's in line with Trek, and I like that it's a little bit like outside of the Anglosphere, which they don't do too often with some of the historical references. How do you spell that? By just for curiosity.
Sure, it's Jesenius. No
Okay, say
double
it again.
Gesenius.
Justinius. Okay, I think I got it.
Yeah, and I looked it up because this is going to be a show about a medical ship, and it's going to combine sort of an investigative quality and hospital kind of drama in a Starfleet setting. And I was looking up famous like healers and physicians and stuff, and that was like one of the first names I saw that just popped at me, and I was like, that's the one I want. I actually have not researched this guy in depth, but I like the name too much to potentially get rid of it. So Gesenius it is.
Okay. So it's a Starfleet ship, the USS Gesenius.
Yes, and after some debate, I originally there was a possibility of this actually being two ships, a sort of a scout ship or like a science medical ship, so that'd be a smaller ship, and one larger Olympic class ship, like Dr. Crusher's ship, the Pasteur, was in All Good Things.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided I've often thought that I wanted the Olympic class to take a bigger role, and so I did away with that, and this all takes place sort of on or through the eyes of the Olympic class Starfleet ship, the Gesenius.
Okay, so let me ask another thing about the setting. I'm assuming it's like post Voyager with using an Olympic class ship.
Yes, I think I saw that they came into use in 2373, and I'm setting this in 2383.
Okay.
Which I think puts it after Voyager and Nemesis, but a little bit before, say, the attack on the Mars shipyards that triggers a lot of Picard.
Yeah, this would be like 4 years after Nemesis. So it's kind of in the same time as the Lower Decks, the upcoming animated show.
Yep.
You can do a crossover with them.
After Nemesis, but before, to go by Romulan time standards, but before the Hobus incident throws everything into disarray. It's a few years before. So, which is good because the Romulans do play at least a small background role in this.
So it's just a all-around medical ship. Do they have like a specific mission?
There is a specific mission. This is going to be a serial TV style thing with big plot reveals constantly going on and a sense of a driving mission. So here's the most basic thing that happens is that as a sort of backstory, often the isolationist Gorn hegemony in the Beta Quadrant, they are experiencing a sort of a kind of plague that's unique, and I'll get to it in just a second. But it's actually been going on for a little while when they sort of break their isolation and they ask the Federation for help. And this is kind of unprecedented. And the idea of sort of bringing the Gorn maybe into the Federation fold is enough of a temptation to allow for it. And so the Gesenius is a ship that's kind of captained by a Betazoid named Navrali Sil, S-I-L. So just Captain Sil is maybe the easiest way to think of it. A ship that's kind of like exemplifies the sort of Doctors Without Borders ethos. They're kind of a boldly go medical ship that's known for going into sort of hotbeds of dangerous territory, wartime stuff. I think it's notably has. I made notes that it had been. It helped coordinated relief efforts during the Dominion War. That they flew into Nausicaan territory to treat a war chief whose death would have created a power vacuum. And they brokered the establishment of a medical research facility on the planet Baku, that being from Star Trek Insurrection.
Nice. I like that you're using a lot of the continuity. That's really cool.
I always felt like even though I understand the Baku people and their healing planet, that they wanted to like chill on their own, they seemed so kind and open otherwise. It seemed weird to me that they wouldn't at least let people research that. So I like the idea that they might have established a little bit of a medical facility there to at least see what they could derive from the planet. So
even if they wouldn't let Thaddeus Riker come there and not die from his silicone-based virus.
Is that Riker's dad?
No, that was his kid from the Picard that
Oh,
died.
right. Who needed some positronic
Yeah.
hookup, really, though. And I don't know if the Baku can do that.
Okay. We'll give him an
So
out.
they are called in to investigate this strange medical phenomena, which turns out there's some other Star Trek tie-ins here too. What they will find out after a little bit of time is that sort of on the fringes of the Gorn hegemony, which there's so little information about it that a secondary goal of this series will be to reveal a lot about the Gorn themselves and to kind of do to somewhat for them what the Romulans had done for them in Picard.
Nice.
That they were excavating a planet sort of on their outer reaches and uncovered some Iconian technology, a subterranean Iconian temple that was a vast temple. And they have been like privately looking to see if they can weaponize that technology and have actually used an Iconian portal there. I don't know if those are illegal, but I know that they were destroyed by the Federation if they found them.
Yeah, they don't want them to fall into the wrong hands. And they bring that up in Deep Space Nine with some rogue Jem'Hadar who try to get access to Iconian tech.
That fits. Yeah, I think I saw some stuff about that, even though I haven't seen the episode. So the Gorn were poking around in here, and they inadvertently triggered something that's, let's see, looking to see what I called it. They inadvertently triggered this a piece of technology that's they now call the contagion node, but it triggered a sort of viral pulse that wasn't like a normal biological virus, but something that traveled through subspace and interferes with like the electrical firing in the cerebral cortexes, and has passed through most of the Gorn hegemony by the time the story opens, and it has caused a series of very strange effects. And without getting into too much detail right at the moment, that's why they've called them in there. And there's some other intrigues and things going on. The Gorn require to as sort of a trade-off, a little bit in the style of installing T'Pol in Enterprise. The Gorn install a security officer as on board the Jasenius, and so they will have a Gorn on the bridge.
Okay, so cool. We get like a Gorn regular character?
Yes. That is, let's see, Security Chief Sashias.
Oh, do you want to get into all your characters?
Yeah, sure. Let's go through it, and then I'll kind of reveal the mysteries of what's going on, which is sort of the big stuff. So at the heart of it, we've got Captain Navrali Sil. I did not do too much casting on this, but I pictured him as in his 50s with slightly longer curly hair with some silver in there. And to some degree, if you could take away the smarminess in it, do you know the actor Chris Sarandon?
That sounds familiar, but no.
He was the vampire in the original Fright Night. He was the evil prince in Princess Bride. He kind of plays smarmy characters, but he's played straight characters.
He was in Star Trek too at one point, wasn't he?
Oh shit, was he?
I think so. But go ahead, keep talking about him. I'll look that up.
This isn't a literal casting, but more like because he's aged past where this character would be. But
sure.
But him around 50s. So he's a Betazoid, and he is like a full Betazoid with telepathic abilities. I also want to use this series to explore sort of ethical issues around that, and sort of finally get a little bit more detail on how the Federation treats telepathy, how consent is gained or not. He is definitely a person who does not. He uses his maybe empathic abilities pretty naturally all the time, but he will not ever use his telepathy without consent and without sort of legal structure for it. Although I will certainly come up with episodes to make him push that to the test, where it may be called upon for him to see if he wants to bend that.
Like Spock and Valeris in Star Trek VI.
Well, we'll try not to make it so rapey. But he is a person who is actually fairly easy.
Yeah, okay, he did play the character. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead.
He played a Elorian on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, interesting. That's one of Whoopi Goldberg's people, right?
Yeah, he basically.
That is to say, that is one of Guinan's people.
He basically is like like a bad Guinan. He opens up his own bar
That's
and
what Soren
casino on
was.
Deep Space Nine. He becomes a rival of Quark.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I got to see that episode at some point. But yeah, Soren is the evil Gaiman. I guess all
Well,
the other Elarians, our example is that she's the only good one and everybody else is a jerk.
if I can get you to watch season 2 of DS9, you can see him on there.
Well, I'm almost there. He's got a kind of a reputation for getting stuff done, but he does use his empathic abilities to kind of sometimes to manipulate people. He is I'm not going to say he's a less conscientious Troy, but he does he does sort of willingly do that, and
A strong negotiator.
he's a strong negotiator. He also has some, but deals privately with some anxiety over what might be seen as overstepping the use of his Betazoid abilities. That's where his second in command will come in to kind of help him out with some of those decisions. And he is like his specialty before becoming the captain of this. He's been a chief medical officer before on a Nebula class ship, and he specializes in sort of exobiology. So he is particularly good at trying to plug into alien ways of thinking and sort of looking at how that affects their progresses from their biology and stuff like that. So I do want to make this a show that thinks about the aliens of Star Trek in a slightly deeper way, especially some of the weirder aliens, maybe. But the Gorner at the heart of it. Let's see. His first officer is another. Well, is not another human. Is a human. Her name is Ariana Contreras. She's in her early 40s, and she's kind of she is like buff. She is like really swole and sort of athletic looking. She's got a sort of buzzed haircut on the sides, and I was thinking that's the only other person I have like a possible model for. Do you remember that soccer player? Was it Megan Rapinoe, who was been in the headlines a lot lately?
Oh yeah. Even though when you were describing this character, I was picturing Vasquez from Aliens.
Bigger than that,
Okay.
and in fact, probably bigger than that soccer player too. But I was just thinking of her more about the attitude that soccer player Megan Rapinoe projects of sort of she's an activist as well as like a award-winning athlete, but she's got an attitude, and there's definitely some of that coming off of Ariana or Commander Contreras is probably the easiest way to think of her. She is a sort of there are plenty of other doctors and things on this ship, but that's not what her specialty is. She's worked alongside Commander Sill or Captain Sill for the last 6 years, and she's more along the lines of an expert in like history and tactics and things like that. But she's a very physical person, and she gravitates towards making a decision faster rather than slower. She tries to push him out of his when he gets locked up on decision making. She tries to push. We need thoughts. We need an idea now. She likes the aliens that or gravitates to the ones that tend to be more physical and less cerebral. So more Klingon and Gorn, less Betazoid maybe, and less. I guess I'm going to say, oh shit, I don't know who are the most cerebral aliens in Star Trek.
I guess like the Vulcans.
Yeah, for sure. She's not like antagonistic towards him, but she just tends to buddy up a little bit more aggressively with people.
Okay. She reminds me of someone that we both know.
That's an interesting notion. I have that in her spare time she practices Orion kickboxing, a kind of brutal form of kickboxing that made to disable an opponent completely. So
yeah. So is there like Orion mixed martial arts where like they like fight for like I don't know like gamblers to bet on them and stuff?
Yeah, I think that would fit in there. And
That sounds very Orion.
We'll see some Orions before the series is out. I'm going to kind of I don't want to spend too long on these guys, so I'll kind of quickly go through the others, but I have kind of written up sort of details and hobbies and interests on some of these characters. There is a ship's counselor. I decided I wanted that especially for essentially a mobile hospital that would be a pretty vital thing to have. The ship's counselor is a male Vulcan character who's playing a little bit against type and is actually part of a slightly in general this is a slightly unconventional crew, and that's sort of accepted because they go into unconventional areas. So Lieutenant Commander Kyrev is the sort of handsome Vulcan ship's counselor. He has lightly black skin, I guess I'd say, and he uses his sort of Vulcan logic towards psychoanalysis. But he is a bit of an offshoot of a new Vulcan philosophy that's I call the Tarot logicians. Tarot being whoever the leader of the movement is, wherein they try and balance logic with the sort of more diplomatic connections to the emotional needs of other races. So this is not a full hippie Vulcan, but he's a person who kind of goes out of his way to stretch his empathic side. And he is actually, for Vulcans, I decided he would be a little bit more sexual than most, but he would never threaten, he would never risk it breaking patient confidentiality. So that is only ever when they have shore leave or stop at a station or something else. But then he is a little bit of what I would call a Vulcan horn dog.
Okay. So, horny Vulcan?
Yep.
And I'm sorry, you said he was the CMO, or is he the counselor?
No. He's the ship's counselor. He would take
Okay.
he is in the role of Troy, he's essentially applying Vulcan logic towards his duties. The security chief again is the Sashaeus, a Gorn who himself was a combat medic and has different ideas about medicine, and that'll be kind of a frequent source of conversation on the show. He's got a creepy hissing laugh like the original Gorn did when it was building traps in Arena.
Is he a man in a suit, or do you picture your Gorn as CGI?
That's a good question. I actually hadn't thought about that. I kind of wanted him to have a tail so that when he fights, he could use a tail. But they only did that in like one of the Star Trek computer games, and Gorn don't usually have tails. I guess I'd probably I liked what they did with Saru so much. I guess I want maybe a good costume.
Okay.
And with a little bit of CG enhancement for like weird lizardy eye movements. And if they
That'd be perfect. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, if they happen to do a tail, then they could CG the tail, but that's kind of neither here nor there. But he is a big old brute, and he is like giant and a little bit scary. When he's excited about things, though, he has a neck sack that puffs up with excitement.
I have a lizard that runs around in my backyard like every day around noon, and he puffs out his neck thing.
You should name that lizard Sashaeus.
Okay. Antonia's been calling him Lizzie, but I'll see what she thinks of that.
Yeah, she needs something with an apostrophe. There's the chief medical officer is a Vietnamese guy named Lieutenant Commander Huang, who's a sort of very sweet and sort of literate guy who kind of exemplifies a lot of Starfleet standards and is kind of like a very gentle doctor. I decided that he's a guy who privately has written some novels that are medical thrillers, one of which was pretty successful and one of which tanked. Hollow novels, I should say.
You can't win them all.
You can't win them all. There's a science officer on the ship is Greb, and Greb is a Tellarite woman, modeled on the Enterprise's Tellarites. That's the series Enterprise. She is a belligerent science officer who, you know how Worf would always be like, he would always pick the most aggressive stance when a problem would show up?
Yeah.
She's
like,
kind of...
Troy is like, oh, I'm pregnant by like a weird alien entity. He's like, we should kill it now.
Yes, well, so Officer Greb is that person, but with science. She sort of feels like it's self-evident, and that if you're not taking the sort of logical scientific solution, she starts to get angry at you.
I like it.
Now, she's not completely unprofessional about it. She can rein it in, but she's known for her creative insults, and her belligerence will actually make her kind of one of the surprise friends with the Gorn, since they sort of respect her forthrightness. And the last major character on the show is the Gorn ambassador, Ambassador Resh, Resh. He's the Gorn liaison to the Gesenius. He's kind of a tall and more lean Gorn from their like a ruling caste system, and he travels around in a. He's not going to be there all the time, but when he does, he has a well-armed sort of Gorn frigate. We know from the episode Arena that they had technology, starship technology that was at least the match of the Federation, that went toe to toe with the Enterprise, matched its warp speed and all that. So this is a pretty intimidating ship, and he is both a political figure, but he is not whose motives are a little hard to know early on. But he's definitely not a complete like scumbag or anything. He's actually very concerned that the plague that I'm going to call the subspace plague, that it could bring down the Gorn Empire. And so he feels like this mission needs to be a success, even though he is definitely holding back some big information from the crew of the Gesenius about what's going on.
Okay, so that's the entire crew, or the entire cast?
That is the full cast. Sort of the bridge crew. I did not... you'll notice that there's like no key like helmsman. The first officer, she is the like a con officer, and kind of is always itching to do that, so she will fill in that role a little bit.
Number one.
Yeah, similar kind of thing, and but for the most part, the like that is not a won't be a super important character to the show. There will be battles and stuff. It's not a major, like the Olympic class ships are not fighter ships; they are medical ships. But I figured that this one has a little bit of rigged for the outskirts of civilization in the Beta Quadrant, and has like a really strong defensive shields, some pretty precise phasers, and it is a little bit more able to defend itself than others. It does have like a big crew of 750. These are not small ships, so. So yeah, they but in a pinch they can defend themselves. But the captain is known more than anything else for making allies with aliens, and so what he will be trying to do more than anything is garner allies in this Gorn space.
So let me ask you a little bit more about like what happens, and talk about like more like the story type stuff. I'm curious, are there antagonists other than... It sounds like this virus,
yes.
maybe a sign of the time, Dave.
Yeah,
it is kind of the chief bad guy of the show. But like, who else do they cross paths with that they might have to fight?
Let me just quick say, the virus, because it is at the core of it, it actually like triggered for the first time. There was like a pulse from the infection, the Iconian infection node, like 2 years ago. They've actually been poking around this area for like 3 years. And that when it first happened, let's see, here we go. It caused let's see. Sorry. Okay, so the Gorn synapses slowly throughout the quadrant over the course of a few months started to fire, and a lot of them became sick and listless for weeks. But then it seemed to clear up and seemed to be over, and nobody knew quite what had happened. But then there was a secondary pulse 9 months ago that seemed to be like a sort of mutated version of the signal, and that caused some of these survivors to become very violently feral, murderously so, where they had to be killed or put down or completely caged in. And it was definitely part of the signal pulse. And then just a few weeks ago, the third pulse came that so alarmed the Gorn that's what led them to call in the Gesenius. And when the third pulse hit, it caused a small percentage of those who had from the initial infected to fall into a comatose state for a few days, during which time there were new structures that began to grow in their brain. And when they awoke, they were very cognizant, but they had a drive to get off-world on their own, and they have been disappearing off of various Gorn colonies and cities and planets, and people don't know where they're going, but it seems to be like a directed effort. And so the Gorn are very concerned now that the Iconian device. Well, first of all, they don't know why it was targeting them. This ancient thing. They're concerned that it either adapted to them for finding it, or in some way was actually meant to trigger specifically for them. So this is some of the big mysteries of the show. Will be exactly what the nature of the device is and why it is causing some Gorns to rally in the secret areas of Gorn space for reasons unknown, but that the Gorn are very worried could be a threat to the hegemony. So that's the big mystery that'll be going on. As it happens, because the Romulans are around, they know at least about the portal, and they have suspicions about the subspace plague. The Romulans are regularly sort of infiltrating the area. They will show up as antagonists. They may try to infiltrate the Gesenius crew. These outer worlds are also the subject for raids by a new coalition between the Orions and the Nausicaans, sort of a raider coalition. And they recognize that the Gorn's defenses have all dropped in the last several months, and so they're pushing it. And the outskirts where the planet where the Iconian tech was found is now definitely a more dangerous place because of that. So the Romulans and the Raider contingent will play a big role. And then also over the course of time, they'll look into it, investigating the source of the virus by checking out other Romulan worlds. The hegemony implies that there's other worlds, and that the Gorns kind of dominate them as a sort of first among equals or something. So I think there may be actually even some other alien species that live under the Gorn hegemony, and they'll be the crew of the Gesenius will definitely want to see if the pulse has affected them, and if it affected them differently. So I expect to actually see a fair number of alien civilizations, both strangely inhuman ones and in the Trek tradition, more humanoid ones.
Okay. Is that pretty much all that you have as far as do you have any ideas for a specific episode you want to share with us, or do you have an ending to your arc or something that you want to share? Or?
So I don't have the big reveals decided. What the final nature of the Iconian technology is, I don't know. I think that I like the idea that the Gesenius will resolve this, though, and that the season will take place in the Gorn space. But if this were an ongoing show, a follow-up season would be set somewhere else. So that's the fact that it's in Gorn, the Gorn hegemony, is not vital to the premise, but it is the season 1 premise.
Got it.
What I want to do is have some of the drama of a hospital show with a strong investigation drive and a big mystery with multiple motivations from the Gorn themselves, trying to determine what the Iconians' motivation was and reveal more about them. Let's see. I want to, among other things, I want an episode where the Gorn ambassador kind of goes off on a bit of a tirade about the events of the original arena on Cestus 3. That he's got very strong opinions about the Metrons. I had a notion that, they said that one Metron at the end of the episode, I haven't rewatched it, obviously, was that he said Kirk's you look more like a boy than a man or something when he sees his sort of humanoid form. And the guy's like, well, I'm several thousand years old, actually. But I did kind of like the idea that he might have been a more naive one. And so to the Gorn, that was actually sort of a culturally biased challenge that because they engage in so much close combat in their history, didn't really have a phase where gunpowder, which was how Kirk won, was a big thing for them. They moved on to starships, and they had to have disruptors or phasers at that point. But gunpowder was not a thing for them. And so they're a little bit bitterly angry that was the winning move there. And he has strong feelings about it. I don't have too many specific episodes outlined. It's more like some of the ideas.
Is more of one big story, so it's more like the Discovery model.
Sure. The Gorn, their role as whether they come closer to the Federation will be a big thing. Whether they can be honest about the fact that they were hoping to use this to develop weapons to raise their own stature, even though Iconian technology is probably, if not full-on illegal, I don't know if they're not part of the Federation at this point. So I don't know if they
it
would.
could be in violation of some intergalactic treaty or something.
Right. So I think they will have some hard questions to answer too. Let's see. I already mentioned that I wanted to focus a little bit on sort of Betazoid ethics along the way. But yeah, I want to show that the Gorn aren't sort of monolithic, that there's maybe different strata. I liked the idea from the episode that, from Arena, that they, there's not something you can infer from it, but you know, the Cestus thing was like actually like an invasion of their area. That they don't actually react always like antagonistically and fast. Otherwise, they'd be like the Klingons and of TOS spreading through the galaxy. But that they, when they do decide they need to make a move, they hit really hard. And so we'll see like some exciting scenes like that where maybe they want to pay back the Nausicaan Orion syndicates, or when they think a move is ready to be made, they're going to strike really hard. So I think the Gorn will be exciting to see in it. The Jasenius will hopefully be an exciting sort of soap opera. There will be some romance and things on there. But yeah, like you said, that is a big arc. It's full serial TV, but I don't have too many specific episodes in mind.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. And Star Trek has a big tradition of using medical science to generate stories. I like the idea of the ship that could be geared towards that. And that's a very interesting arc. I would definitely watch that.
Thanks. I'm trying to figure out if there was anything else I needed to mention about it. I just like the look of those Olympic ships. They're weird. You know, it has the big sphere on the front.
Yeah, very much inspired by the old Daedalus design that was a concept for the Enterprise that Matt Jeffries came up with before he did the saucer and 3-rocket Constitution shape.
Yeah, I remember reading that he like really liked that design. I don't think it looks particularly good in the early Trek in the TOS era, but I liked how they kind of fused it with some of the sleeker designs of the Next Generation era of ships. It's still a little weird looking, but that's kind of what I like about it. So.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to see that design return for a show, I think.
Yeah, that was, originally, by the way, my thought for this was that the Jasenius would be a small ship, and that there would be a secondary ship that would be sort of an Olympic ship that would essentially be like a base of operations, but it wouldn't be traveling around a lot. But I liked I was going to use the Nova class ship, the smaller.
Yeah. Well, those are a lot smaller. I love that design, though. I wish Voyager looked like that. I love that.
It's a really cool design, but I realized I wanted something that shouted out that this was a sort of medical series, and I was like, they have one ship, one really cool looking ship. I know there's been other medical ships, but one really notable one that hasn't gotten time, and that's why I wanted to try and bring that in. Anyway, so there we have it, Star Trek Jasenius.
Okay, well, if that's all you got, I guess we'll go ahead and pass the baton, and
yep.
I'll pitch you my show idea.
Yep. I am ready to believe you.
Okay. Okay, Ghostbuster. So here we go. I'm actually not going to say the title of my show until the end for dramatic purposes.
Oh, how very dramatic.
I'm probably overhyping.
By the way, I don't know if I said this, but like I think I probably did. I was originally calling this Star Trek Gorn Space, which I like too, but because it's not contingent on being set in Gorn territory, I decided to name it after the ship. Anyway,
that's probably a wise choice.
All right, so you're going to hold out on that. So tell me, you want to tell me a little bit about the setting or the ship first?
Yeah, I'll start with the setting. So this is going to be on a Starfleet ship like yours. It's going to be in the year 2400. So it's the dawn of the 25th century. This is like right after Picard season 1.
Okay. Yeah. Moving right along. You want it to be contemporary.
Yeah, a lot of the ideas I came up with in this, I was trying to do one of two things. I was trying to, A, do things that I knew you wouldn't do and that would be different from things you were picking, and also, B, doing things that I didn't particularly want to do at first, but I just wanted to challenge myself.
That's interesting. How could you know they would be things I wouldn't do when we didn't know what each other...
that I thought you wouldn't do.
All right, so you psychologically profiled me. I see how it is.
Yeah, so, one of the things I'm doing is with this ship that they're on.
Yep.
I kind of want to hold out on the name of the ship for just a little bit, but
yep.
I always say that Star Trek does not have to be a show about a crew of Starfleet officers on a ship named Enterprise that are the flagship of the Federation, and there's like out exploring space. I always say that like Star Trek doesn't have to do that. I love that DS9 broke the mold and did something different, and that Voyager followed in that tradition, and then like Discovery and Picard. But I do hear a lot of people wanting a show like that, asking for it, and I actually really want them to make that Pike show that would be just that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people want them to move Star Trek forward down the timeline and give us this new Enterprise on a new mission of exploration. And I thought I would challenge myself by saying, like, well, I do see some problems with doing that. So how would you do that and do it right? One of the problems, I think, is that post-Voyager, you have all the technology. They've solved so many problems. They have, like, a solution for everything. Like, just, like, the level of tech is so advanced.
Right.
That if you are, like, the state-of-the-art big flagship, how do you challenge that ship? And so I challenged myself by coming up with what I hope is a acceptable answer to that question. But yes, I was going to hold this out till the end, but I'll just get it out of the way now. They are on a USS Enterprise. I don't know if it's going to be F or G or H, but it's some letter shortly after E. And they are exploring the galaxy, representing the Federation. The cool thing about this ship, and it's big, it's a little bit longer than like the Kelvin Enterprise.
Oh, that's pretty big.
Yeah, just so on like the scale of like all of the ships, I do want it to be like the longest one.
Now, what kind of crew complement are we talking?
Well, it's less than 1,000. It's probably around the same as the Olympic you mentioned, 700 or so. Yeah,
okay. A little less than a Galaxy.
Doesn't have quite the internal volume of like the Galaxy class, which had 1,000 people, but some of them were civilians.
Yeah.
However, I do have some civilians on my ship. The thing about it is that it has Starfleet's only second manufactured slipstream drive, which is it's a technology that they've brought up in Star Trek before that they used on Voyager, but it's basically, for the purposes of the show, it's just going to be faster travel. They actually are now able to go from Federation space to the other end of the galaxy, and it takes a few months, but you can do it. Yeah, it's not going to take a lifetime like it did in Voyager.
All right, so but is it still taking place within our the known galaxy, than the Milky Way?
It's going to take place a little bit. Yes, it's all in the main Star Trek galaxy, the Milky Way, the real life Milky Way galaxy. In fact, that's it's kind of a show about our galaxy. I do want to emphasize that the majority of space is still going to take centuries to explore. This isn't going to like break the universe and be like, oh, now they can just there's nowhere left to explore in the galaxy. Right. No, there's still so much out there that is unknown and unseen. I want to emphasize that, and it's still very new technology that not many people have. However, there is a bit of an arms race now with other factions outside of the Federation also want to get slipstream technology and kind of like expand their territory, get access to new resources, get access to new alliances. People are kind of nervous about the Federation being able to develop the slipstream tech. So what they do on their Enterprise, they invite a lot of their allies to have representation on that ship. They actually have like civilian diplomats stationed on the Enterprise. And part of the mission, because I was asking myself, why do they call it a flagship in Star Trek? Like in real life, in like real life naval stuff, like a flagship is like where like the admiral or where like the commander is.
Right.
So it's called the flagship because this represents the Federation to everyone, and its mission is largely to go to other parts of the galaxy and say like, hey, we're the Federation. This is what we're all about. We want to say hi to you, shake your hand. How are you doing? Anything you need help with? And they also want to bring their buddies along with them, so they can have representation from, from the Klingons, from the Bajorans, from the, if there's Romulans that are on friendly terms with the Federation that want to come along, and like the post-Hobus Nova stuff.
But it's not necessarily, they don't have to be members of the Federation?
Right.
Because Romulans aren't.
Right. No, like the Federation, well, neither are the Bajorans or the Klingons.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's one of the things that they did, is like Starfleet invited other people to like send their representatives on board of the Federation. On board the Enterprise. So you have a ship that has like a bunch of like these diplomats on, the civilian diplomats.
So I'll just go ahead and say it. This has some Babylon 5 elements.
It does have a B5 element, especially like an early B5 where it was Sheridan. You know that time where he gets all stressed out about like Jakar started like some type of like riot, or where he was like really like stirring the shit, getting all these other ambassadors pissed off about something. There's like a lot of like diplomatic brush fires like that can occur. And so my captain, I'll get to him in a little bit, but yeah, he has to have a handle on all of that.
What you're saying, is this the crew of this ship, especially the including the ambassadors, is going to be a handful.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also wanted to have like a wide variety of types of characters on here just to generate more story possibilities. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I want to mention is that the only other slipstream drive is on the USS IDIC, like IDIC and infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Because there had to be like a prototype before they built this Enterprise. Mm-hmm. The IDIC is mainly used for scientific research, though, so they're always doing some type of crazy experiment. We'll see the IDIC eventually, but they're not the ones out there being the flagship.
What kind of ship is the IDIC?
An IDIC class.
Oh, it's its own class. Got it.
Yeah. So the USS Enterprise is IDIC class, and then the IDIC was like the original IDIC prototype. I dig it.
That name is as core, I think, you can get to Star Trek philosophy, like real, like something meaningful as you can get. And of course, it's specifically associated with the Vulcans, but surely it feels like something that could also be embraced by the Federation as a whole.
Well, here's part of my struggle with naming it, was that I really wanted a name that could be something like galactic, and I really wish the Galaxy class wasn't used in TNG,
right?
Because I would love for this to be the Galaxy class.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can't call it like the Milky Way class. That sounds dumb. Our Galaxy actually has like a really stupid name, and there's not like another like official name for it that I could find Googling.
Yeah.
I was
Unless you're going to say like Spiral class or something like that. It's which sounds a little off, but
yeah, no, that doesn't sound cool either. And I thought about like I'm going to look up like some ancient ship name, some ancient Greek name, and I thought about like the Hecateus class.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? I was going to call it the USS IDIC.
Yeah.
Or the IDIC class Enterprise. But yeah, that's basically my setting and my premise. Just the thing is that a lot of people are kind of unsure of the Federation and intimidated by them. If you look at like the last few decades, they've defeated the Borg multiple times. They fought the Dominion off. The Romulan Empire, who rivaled them for 200 years, is now in ashes. The Klingons have kind of been domesticated. Like the Federation was able to tame the Klingons. So one of the things that they're trying to do on their mission is to, show people like, we're here to be your friend. And they're going to places where the Federation might be more of just like known by what they've heard, what they heard about when Voyager passed through the Delta Quadrant, or what the Dominion propaganda told them.
Right.
And
I imagine they could still be kind of intimidating because they're rolling up in this tricked out ship.
Yes.
And so there's that's where I would feel like maybe the ambassadors, and maybe even the fact that there's like some internal dissent sometimes, probably might actually be kind of reveal that they are a little bit more Federation philosophy, that they're not conquerors.
But people want to get to the slipstream technology, so they also have there are spies that are going to try to infiltrate this ship.
Mm-hmm.
and people really want to get their hands on this tech. And I was a little iffy on if do you really want to make the galaxy that much smaller that you can get all around it like this. But I was thinking like, well, you know, in the other Star franchise, they have a galaxy that they can fly from one end to the other, basically, and you know they still have plenty of like unexplored territories, and you can always like generate new planets, new ideas. So I think it can work. You know,
I also think that like it's probably not too difficult to come up with reasons why, when you need to in Star Trek, why you can't just get exactly what you want right away. It's like, you know,
well, it still takes months to get from one end to the other. So
right. So they can't just like rush in like the cavalry all the time.
Exactly.
But they could do it with some focus.
Oh, but that's one of the things about this ship. I also wanted to justify the size of it being so big, is that it can also assist with if you're a station or a ship somewhere else and you're damaged and you're in need of repairs. This ship and this engineering team, it's almost as good as like being at a star base. Like they have the resources, they can like really help you out. So with the Federation kind of expanding out to new parts of the galaxy, it really is going to benefit having this flagship who can, you know, show up everywhere and help you out if you need any type of repairs or anything.
Nice.
I think that's
because I feel like that would also, that's another plot like right there is like, well, what happens when some ship shows up for repairs? That could be a story in and of itself as to like the arriving ship.
Oh, and speaking of stories, I just want to say like this is going to be a more episodic show than what we're used to with Discovery and Picard lately. However, there is going to be big arcs that pay off and kind of like a major arc to the entire show. I want to go ahead and get into my characters.
All right, let's hit it.
So the commanding officer of this ship is named Captain Ezekiel Garza. He goes by Zeke Garza. I thought that was like a cool future name, like the Z's, I guess. I don't know. But
yeah, no, there's something about that.
Yeah, Captain Garza. He is a human man, Mexican national from somewhere in like northern Mexico. And if he was going to be cast as an actor, I was kind of picturing someone like, what's the guy from The Mandalorian?
Oh, man.
Pascal.
Yeah, it's not like Pedro Pascal,
Yeah,
is it?
Pedro Pascal.
Okay, yeah.
Either like him.
That's a Stan Lee name, it's got alliteration.
Or like the guy from Rogue One, Diego Luna.
Yeah, for sure.
I picture like a kind of face like that.
Those guys have a little bit of character to their faces, you know?
Yeah, he's in his mid-40s. He is known for being like very charismatic. He is an excellent diplomat. He's known for empathy and seeing things from other people's point of view. He's kind of famous in Starfleet for, and just his short career on his previous command, he was really good at getting other people to trust him. Mm-hmm. And pretty much every alien species he's dealt with, they all really like him, except for the Ferengi. The Ferengi can't stand him. And it's because he confuses them. They can't figure out what this guy is after. They can't buy his like genuine he gets like invested in other people's concerns and stuff, and it confuses Ferengi.
Yeah, I can for sure see that.
Now because this is set in the year 2400, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's been a couple decades after the Dominion War. He actually fought in the Dominion War when he was only 19. It was before he went to his officer training at the academy. But he went in to Starfleet as an enlisted man to fight the war. Mm-hmm. So he saw some shit, and he can kick ass if he needs to. Mm-hmm. But like I said, like he's more known for being like the diplomat. In that war, though, he was in some pretty nasty battles, and he actually would have been dead if it wasn't for his commanding officer, who at the time saved his life. More on that in a little bit. And also, I saved this for last because it's kind of, I don't want to say insignificant detail, but it's kind of something that won't be focused on too much. But he's also a gay captain.
Okay.
He doesn't have a spouse or anything, but yeah, he might have like a romantic fling here or there. Like I said, it's not going to be treated as like a big deal. There's never been a LGBT captain in Star Trek. I also wanted to have like more Latino representation. So he's a gay Latino captain. Like I said, like it's not gonna come up that much. He's gonna be too busy for romance most of the time, and kind of the same tradition as Picard for most of TNG. So, but that's Captain Zeke Garza. Mm-hmm. Now I'm gonna talk about our first officer. Her name is Commander Taylor Mcneil. And
you say Mcneil?
Mcneil.
Okay.
Or Mcniel.
Okay.
Most people would say Mcneil, but I say that Mcneil.
That's the street I live on, so I'm a fan.
Yes. She is a human female. If she's going to be played by an actor, I would cast someone like Katie Sackhoff, I think is the name of the actress who played Starbuck on Battlestar Galactica.
Mm-hmm. She going to be projecting that same attitude?
Kinda, a little more chill, a little less extreme all the time. But her personality is that she is kind of the same work hard, play hard attitude that Commander Riker had.
Okay.
She can, chill with the crew and play poker and get drinks with you and 10 forward, but she could also be like serious and all business when they were on duty.
When they needed to kick some Tal Shiar ass.
I suppose.
But it is true, like when he needs to be intimidating, he's serious.
Yeah. They kind of have a similar working relationship as Picard and Riker. I would compare them more to that than any other first officer, executive officer dynamic in existing Star Trek. Except instead of a tall, bearded man, she is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, fair-skinned woman in her mid-30s, and she's from Texas. I think our state has been a little underrepresented in Star Trek. It's not a huge deal, but I would like to see a Texan regular character. And she grew up in rural Texas near the Austin area.
Nice. Which, of course, is where we are broadcasting from.
And she has like a little bit of a Texas accent. She's also, just talk about her personality a little bit. She plays guitar. She's really into guitars. Whenever they go into her quarters and you see where she lives, she has one wall that is just nothing but like guitars hanging up on the wall, ranging from like vintage guitars to futuristic sci-fi guitars to alien guitars. She has a Vulcan lute, like Spock hanging up. Her favorite genre of music, she's a little bit of a metalhead, but anything that's like guitar centric, she's down with.
We've talked many a time about wanting Star Trek, as Discovery and a few others prompted it to do, to become a little more hip with its like pop cultural references and not make everything classical.
Yeah.
So
not everyone has
appreciate
to listen to,
the
like,
idea
Beethoven
of somebody who's got a little bit of attitude.
And she also really loves Texas cuisine. She's like really into barbecue, and she has like all like these family recipes. She also really likes spicy food, and she really likes Mexican food. And she's long-term friends with Captain Garza, and one of her favorite things to do is actually to visit Captain Garza's grandmother in Mexico and eat her home cooking. So they've been friends for years. They served together on Captain Garza's previous command, the USS Sanders. And I don't know who that's, Colonel Sanders, Bernie Sanders, I don't know. Just like that's just like the name of that ship. I didn't put too much thought in that. She wasn't the first officer there. This is her first time as first officer. It's his second time in command.
Okay.
But yeah, they've been like, buddies. They know each other. I guess it's a little bit like Trip and Archer.
Okay,
That they have some camaraderie.
Yeah.
They have an excellent working relationship. Like
you're also making me hungry, Fatheree.
Well, sorry. My next character is the second officer, and her name is Lieutenant Commander Torano. She goes by Tori. Everyone calls her Tori. And she works the ops station, so like Data or Harry Kim. And she is a Bolian female in her late 20s.
Nice. Bolian blue with a little seam down the...
Yeah. I always thought we needed a Bolian regular character because they're all only used as like if we need a Federation alien in the background or as like a side character. Well, why don't we actually just like have a Bolian on board and we can use them as Star Trek always does with its alien crew members, use them as a vehicle to explore that alien species.
For sure.
And we can kind of learn more about the Bolians. There's not really much documented on them. I always kind of picture them as like very like bureaucratic. Like they talk about like the banks of Bolia, and so I picture them like they're more about like bureaucracy and all like these institutions and stuff.
Right. Probably like really detailed paperwork and very precise actions.
Well, with Lieutenant Commander Torano. She is kind of a hard ass. She's like very stern and strict, and it kind of rubs some of the other crew the wrong way. And part of her thing is she's kind of like one of those people you might meet in real life who's like in their 20s and they get promoted way too fast and they kind of become like an asshole boss. Mm-hmm. And it's really because like underneath they might have like some insecurities or like they really feel the pressure, like, oh my God, how am I going to live up to this? She's kind of that person who's always like an overachiever. Like she would cry if she didn't have like the top grades in her class, and she was always worried about like impressing her parents. She has siblings that are like renowned doctors or scientists or diplomats or like stuff like that. So like she holds herself up to like too high of a standard for her own good. Right. And part of her arc over the course of the show is that she has to learn from Commander Mcneil, or as Captain Garza calls her, Mac. She goes by Mac, only with like close friends. Most people will call her Commander, but she kind of has to learn from her how to be a better leader, a better boss, and not be such a hard ass all the time.
I dig it.
And they'll kind of like develop like a friendship and kind of like a mentor relationship over the course of the show. Next up is my chief of security, and that is Lieutenant Edgar Frost. He is a black human male in his 50s. If I was going to cast an actor to play him, it would be Idris Elba. He's also British. Okay. This guy grew up in Northampton, England. And he was a fighter in the Dominion War 20 years earlier, or 25 years earlier, I guess. He actually was the commanding officer of Captain Zeke Garza back when Garza was just a 19-year-old. This is the guy who saved his life. Like he literally like carried him over his back out of a battlefield. And Lieutenant Frost, he's only a full lieutenant. He never became a lieutenant commander. He has no interest in becoming a lieutenant commander. He never ever wants to take command. He's very passionate about security. But after the Dominion War, he went through some really horrible stuff, and he's more all about security. He wants to keep people safe. He lost young guys under his command during the war, and he never wants to go through that again. He has like a little bit of like survivor's guilt. They can cope with PTSD and stuff pretty well by the time we get to like this far-flung Federation future, but he still has like some of that baggage. He's very passionate about security, but no ambitions about command. He likes running his security team on this ship, keeping that crew safe, and he's just totally fulfilled by that.
Right. It sounds like it gives him some grounding and stability, which is probably what he needs as he continues to recover.
Yeah, and he's a very like proper military man, very English as far dutiful, straight-laced. Everything has to be like perfect. And he's kind of like a big scary guy. Doesn't smile a lot, a little bit like Worf as far as that's concerned. But he does have like a very small, soft side that is shown with he has a pet. He has a little pug puppy on the ship that lives with him, and her name is Biscuit. But with him being English, Biscuit is what they call cookies.
Like so a cookie,
that's actually like a real sweet name if you're English.
Yep.
In case you were wondering, that was like the one thing that I added because I recently had a pet pug who passed away, And so that was my one little tribute to her.
So Pip gets a tribute. I like it.
Yeah, she gets to live on in my show that I haven't named yet, but I will get to that.
By the way, I have another friend who has a dog whose name is Biscuit, by the way. but they are using it in the Southern Biscuit sense, North American style.
Well, nothing wrong with that. My next character is the chief engineer. His name is Lieutenant Commander Paraparo.
Uh-huh.
He is an alien. Huh? This is the weirdest thing I did, and I wasn't sure about this, and I'm still not sure if you could pull it off. But I thought, I'm just going to go boldly. And this is what we encourage everyone out there who might be doing this challenge and creating their own show. If you think it's too ambitious, I say just lean into it and go boldly.
Yep.
But Lieutenant Commander Paraparo is an alien species that's tentacled and is kind of like an octopus.
Uh-huh.
And I am not 100% sure how you would visualize that on screen. I was kind of thinking, in SpongeBob, there's like a squid man.
Yeah.
Who has, he uses his tentacles for, arms and legs.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking maybe something like that. I would think the way you would do it would be with, prosthetics. You, have, puppeteers working. This isn't a guy who's going to be on screen a lot because he's going to be super busy with engineering. It's a very complex engine room, more so than a typical Starfleet ship. And
to go with the Babylon 5 analogy, it'd be like Kosh, maybe, who was not a big... he was special effectsy, but they didn't show him too often. He was a big character, or a key character, just didn't show a ton.
Well, yeah, my thing is, he's kind of always in, the same place every time you see him.
Yeah, right. That's true.
I was kind of thinking more like Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah. I was thinking, by the way, Fatheree, I'm sure you expected I might throw a Horta in there, and I did consider it. And I'll talk more some other time about, or if we have time at the end, about why I didn't. But yeah, that's interesting. I like that you throw in something non-human. Certainly in my premise, I wanted to have them meet more kind of non-human aliens, but I ended up not putting one in the crew. What's that?
Half my crew is non-human.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I would say non-humanoid.
Oh, yeah. He's kind of humanoid. You would still have an actor's face and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think if this was too hard, you could always kind of do it more CGI style. He does have mobility. You do see him moving around the engineering sets, but he doesn't get out of engineering very much because he's so busy. The thing about him is he's the ultimate multitasker.
Right. That's what I was about to ask.
And it's kind of on the nose, but that's with all the different tentacles.
Yeah.
There's actually going to be a moment where the engine room gets attacked. Someone tries to infiltrate the Enterprise and steal a piece of the slipstream technology that they haven't been able to replicate. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see Commander Paraparo in combat and fighting people. And he's going to have a big spanner in one hand and a phaser in the other, or I should say tentacle. And a phaser in the other tentacle, and he's spinning around, fighting people, trying to protect his engine room.
Nice.
If it was too hard to pull this off, you could also just use an Adosian, the species that Eric's, the 3-armed guy from the animated series was, and you can kind of accomplish the same thing with the extra limb. But I want to do the Octopus Man. You maybe you could do a story where he has to go underwater and he can breathe underwater and stuff.
For purposes of the Tex-Trek challenge, we have an unlimited budget. We're going to say, I think we can fairly say it will work. So.
Okay, so Commander Paraparo, that's our engineer.
Nice.
And next up, I have my chief medical officer. I also have a Vulcan on my ship, Dave. This is Dr. Zarin, and that's spelled Xarin. I thought that would be interesting spelling that is kind of Vulcan, but also unique.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Zarin is a gender non-binary character. Mm-hmm. And they are in their 80s, but looks like they are in their 30s. And I just picture someone with this kind of the Vulcan haircut. I'd like it to be played by an actor who is an actually non-binary actor in real life.
It's interesting. You should cast a Vulcan in a sort of a actually, I don't know if gender fluid equates precisely with non-binary, but I think it's roughly interchangeable, right?
I think those are two different things, but
Maybe so.
not 100%
Well, forgive
sure.
my ignorance if so. But I was just going to say that Vulcans, since they do tend to have the same haircut, there's a certain androgynousness to them, or at least
the haircut is gender neutral.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that.
Now, I thought it would be cool to have a gender neutral character because you don't really see those on TV shows. And
Yep.
I know for a lot of people, like for myself, it's a newer concept. It wasn't even something like I knew of until like 2 or 3 years ago. But I think Star Trek should be able to push representation, and I would encourage actual Star Trek to do this, to be honest. And I was thinking that for me to do it in a respectful way, I would have to have a human character be gender non-binary, because if it was an alien, it would kind of seem like a weird alien thing. And audiences
Right, like
might not
was...
understand that I meant that as like a normal real life thing.
Right.
But
and
then,
also sometimes when you accomplish things through metaphor, it still seems it can seem like a slightly pussified way of doing of kind of just straight up doing something a little more progressive.
Well, I ultimately decided on a Vulcan because I wanted the gender non-binary person to be like the most logical person and most rational person on the ship. And I created this character who it kind of sounds similar to your Vulcan character, I think, and possibly. But Dr. Zarin is fascinated with other species' emotions, and unlike most Vulcans who just kind of dismiss, all these emotional species, it's all quite silly and quaint, and we're so superior for moving past that and embracing logic. Dr. Zarin actually really tries like understand emotions and has studied a lot about not only like biological medicine and like physical medicine, but also mental health. And they are the most trustworthy person on the ship. A lot of people like to go to Dr. Zarin if they're struggling with something, or if they need advice, or if they need some kind of, I guess, counseling. They're not the ship's counselor, but they often will kind of serve that role, like how Guinan, she would. I was thinking of Guinan. She was kind of more the counselor than Troy sometimes on Next Generation.
Yeah, no, totally.
Like if a character is struggling with something.
This is the closest thing I think in our two premises, because I did have it that Lieutenant Commander Kyrov, the ship's counselor, was kind of like that and would even like eat with the crew and stuff like that. Now there was a certain bit of like that was to better enhance their job and to see people in their downtime, in his downtime. But yeah, we both have Vulcans that are a little bit more gregarious and friendlier or warmer towards other cultures.
Yeah. I think there's definitely some overlap there. Moving on, my next character. Sorry, like I said, like I went with a big cast. I think I have 9 main characters.
Yeah.
But my helmsman is Ensign Everett Treadwell. And he's a straight white guy in his 20s. I say like straight white guy because I know like a lot of people online like to complain about like, why can't there be like straight white men and things? So I was like, okay,
Sure.
Here you go. You got one. Shut up. But Ensign Treadwell is a fresh out of the academy graduate. He's like 23 years old. He is a huge fan of Starfleet history. He's so excited that he gets to pilot the Enterprise. That was like his dream job. But also, like, if you go to his quarters, he has like models of various historic ships that he builds. He studies like the schematics of all like these past ships. He reads like the captain's logs of all like these famous captains. You could ask him who commanded this battle of the Dominion War, or who was captain of the Enterprise on this star date, and like he knows all of it. Basically, he's just like a big Star Trek fan who's inside of Star Trek.
Right, like a historical fanboy. Yeah.
But he has a big secret. And I'll go ahead and get into his secret now. It wouldn't be revealed at first. But it turns out that he claimed to have grown up on some distant colony before going to Starfleet Academy. And they find out that there's actually no record of this guy. And it turns out that he was originally one of these advanced non-corporeal energy beings with godlike powers, like Q or the Metrons or the Organians, something like that, who kind of lived outside of normal space and time.
Mm-hmm.
And as a youngster, for like these godlike entities, we probably can't even imagine what their youth is like. But as like a young one of these, he was intrigued by specific events in this one time period in this one part of this one galaxy, so much that he wanted to go live there and experience it for like this one pivotal event. And he created this human body and basically turned himself into this human to go to Starfleet Academy and to go serve in Starfleet.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't remember all of his stuff because he basically wanted to see the non-spoiler version. So he deleted his own memory of what was going to happen, but he's here to witness something big and incredible.
Oh, interesting. So you have a character who was built-in like suggestion that something big is coming.
Yeah. And people kind of resent him because like he lied to everyone. He's a deceiver. They're already kind of paranoid on the ship because they feel like
that's kind of like those parents that like paid to get their kids entrance exams into college. Like if you could just will yourself, oh, I just did good in college because I'm godlike.
Yeah. Well, he actually did the academy on his own. But
that's true. He would have erased his memory by then.
But he did put himself on like a track to succeed and get this job on the Enterprise. So right. There is some resentment, and they're also already freaked out about people spying to try to get to the slipstream drive. So it pisses a lot of people off, and he has to kind of earn back their trust. And my next character is I'm almost done. I only have 2 left.
Okay.
I have a science officer, and she is Lieutenant Junior Grade Natomi Rabe. She is a Cardassian female, and she struggles with her Cardassian heritage. She actually changed her last name to be different from her mother's last name. Her mother was this military figure, and she's kind of an analog for anyone who has like like young people who have like white guilt, or people who are like they live in a country that's like very imperialistic and has done a lot of harm historically, and so they kind of like resent that part of themselves. She basically learned about like Cardassian history, how terrible they were to the Bajorans, a bunch of other stuff Cardassians did that she hates, and she wanted to like distance herself from all of that, to the point she has a problem interacting with other Cardassians, and she has a problem with herself. She kind of hates that part of herself. She joined Starfleet.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, is she the first Cardassian to join Starfleet?
Yeah, she would be the first.
Okay.
Kind of like how Worf was the first Klingon and Nog was the first Ferengi. This is a continuation of that, and we can use her to see what's going on with the Cardassians after DS9. It's never been touched on, so she would be a great way to explore that. But she joined Starfleet to get away from other Cardassians. She wanted to go like live on Earth and go to Starfleet Academy. They also established on DS9 that Cardassian females are more tend to be the scientists in their society, kind of like the opposite of Earth, where historically like the men have dominated the sciences. And Cardassian society, it's the other way around, where it's mainly women. So it kind of ties into that. But she's also someone who's very passionate about science, and she views science as the way to make a more fair and egalitarian universe. She's very passionate for anyone who's been oppressed, because like she has like this guilt from what the Cardassians did to the Bajorans. I also kind of based this on like I have a girlfriend who grew up in Hawaii, and she's very much aware of, I think, like the history that went on there of how the Hawaiian people were conquered and the ramifications of that decades later. I know in Ireland, a country I visited recently that I really like, but because of their 800 years of struggle with British imperialism, they tend to be very passionate about the little guys that are the underdogs, and people like the Palestinians and stuff like that. They like the Irish are always passionate about those people with those types of struggles. So that would be Lieutenant Rabe is always willing to like back those people that are being oppressed.
Did you say she's if she were a human, would she be the equivalent of somebody in their 20s or 30s? She's pretty young, right?
Yeah, she's in her 20s.
Got
it. She's older than Ensign Treadwell. But no, she's a lieutenant junior grade, so like one step up from an ensign. And then my final character, I have an Elorian, like we were just talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The Guinan species, but her name is Latasha. Huh. And like Guinan, she is very old and very mysterious. Mm-hmm. I kind of want an actress who kind of has like some ethnicity where she looks like her ancestors could have been from like any continent, something that's kind of like hard to pin down and does kind of like add like the mysterious factor. Mm-hmm. But you know, like Elorians are like basically human, or I guess they're like 100% human. They're like indistinguishable from a human. So, but Latasha, they actually find in like an old, I was gonna say Iconian outpost, but you used one of those too.
Yeah.
So I'll go with the Takan Empire, which kind of serves the same purpose as the Iconians.
You can use there's for purposes of our challenge. I think it's okay if we have minor duplication of that kind of stuff.
Okay, well,
it's a big plot point for me, and I don't know how big a plot point it is for you.
Well, they actually like find her in this old ancient outpost, but she's been locked up. She basically like got stuck in a booby trap for 200 years.
Uh-huh.
And they find her in the first episode, and she was investigating something 200 years ago where it looked like there were certain similarities between these ancient races in Star Trek, like the Takan Empire or the Iconians, or that humanoid species that seeded all of the galaxy that we learn about in that episode, The Chase.
Preservers?
Preservers
or?
Well, no, the preservers are something else.
Okay.
Well, they could be the same thing. But anyways, the point is there's this recurring thing of history repeating itself where some species kind of takes over the entire galaxy and then they all die off. And it's been happening again and again and again. Latasha used to be kind of like a space archaeologist and was starting to like uncover certain similarities that kind of connected these events that happened hundreds of thousands of years apart from each other. And how could it all be connected? And as she was investigating, she actually got her spouse, who was kind of her partner in her archaeological research, killed. They were attacked by this entity that we find out is kind of an artificial probe. Like think like when V'ger made the Ilea probe in Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yeah.
For this purpose, they're kind of used more like Terminators. They're like these. They look like people, but they have like a specific purpose, and they're sent in to go do their specific purpose, and they can be like incredibly deadly if you get in their way. But there's something trying to cover up these revelations that she was finding of all these things being connected. And because she's been imprisoned for 200 years, she's kind of out of the loop. Like she's never even heard of humans, and now like they're a prominent species in this Federation. Like she knew Vulcans and some other warp-capable species from 200 years earlier. Or I guess, is 200 the right? I think I might be thinking 300.
Yeah, it needs to be like a little bit more to
definitely... it was like 50 years before Enterprise when she got stuck. So yeah, it's actually 300 years.
Got it. And she was like a cognizant this whole time. She wasn't like in some
she had like access like a replicator. Like she just like didn't die because she's an Elorian.
Yeah.
But what happened back in her past when her spouse died, and she kind of got more dedicated to unraveling this mystery. What ended up happening is she turned to like more criminal elements, and now like 300 years later, she is totally fine with like finding some sacred artifact and trading it to some Nausicaan pirate in order to charter a ship to go over here and do this. And she has like no loyalty to the greater good. She's kind of just like dedicated to solving this mystery. And she comes onto the ship as, you know, non-Starfleet or anything. She's like this totally like separate character, and really butts heads with Captain Garza. But they find out that they need each other because they both want to like solve this mystery. And she has all this knowledge from 300 years ago, all the stuff that she figured out. And there are these probes that are disguised as people, where, you know, they can blend in with various alien species that are out there that are trying to stop them. And that's kind of the big major arc. But in the meantime, it's going to be mainly like episodic stories. I do have like some ideas of things that might happen. There's also going to be you know, like an episode where Lieutenant Frost, I said like he doesn't want to do command. Well, everyone else is going to be like off the ship or something, and he has to be in command. And he's going to struggle.
I'm always a sucker for those stories. I love them.
There's going to be a story where we go and see what's going on in the Gamma Quadrant after the Dominion War. There's going to be a story where we go to the Delta Quadrant and we met some people who might have crossed paths with Voyager and Captain Janeway. Captain Janeway is actually an admiral now, like we saw in Star Trek Nemesis, and she's in command of Captain Garza. That's his direct report, because she has experience, you know, being in a ship on the other side of the galaxy. So she's kind of in command of the Enterprise's mission, and she often reminds Captain Garza, you know, like, you have a lot of privileges I didn't have. I couldn't always be the super nice guy that you're known for being. You know, because I had to get my crew home, and I didn't have, you know, the flagship. I didn't have a slipstream drive. But now it's important that you go out there and you represent the Federation, because you can be Mr. Nice Guy.
Right.
And the bigger arc that it would all build to, though, this is the part where I said, like, it's kind of similar to something Picard did. But you know how in Star Trek Picard they had the spoilers for Picard, if you haven't seen the entire first season. They had the synths from beyond the galaxy. That we both kind of had problems with how that was handled. That would come and like wipe us all out. But essentially what happens is that there are these greater beings that control empires that span multiple galaxies, and they're always like at war with each other, and they're incredibly advanced and incredibly old. But one of the things that they fear is like new competition. And so now whenever like a new species gets advanced enough that they can kind of take over an entire galaxy, they get obliterated. That's why it keeps happening in the Star Trek universe. That's why it happened to the Khan Empire. That's why it happened to the Iconians.
You know, I actually think that probably could be a blessing in disguise, because when you get that powerful, chances are you're some sort of more imperialistic or
that ties into this. So the Federation is now getting close to that, where they might be viewed as a threat. They're getting poised to, they're getting positioned to expand to the entire empire. To expand to the entire galaxy. And one of the things why there's these probes here is because these people have gotten very good at predicting like when one of these species is going to rise up. And basically, like, they've concluded that this is like, when they get to this point, you have to stop them then. You have to nip it in the bud, or they can get too much to hand. They could become a threat if you let them go on.
Right. It's kind of the equivalent of like our fear of the singularity for AI. It's like a cultural singularity or something.
I thought this was kind of too similar to some of the things in the video game Mass Effect. And then after what Picard did, I was like, you know what? If they could do this, I could do this. And you could even try to fix Picard and make a little bit more sense, in my opinion, by saying that like that synth uprising, that was actually like part of this stuff that's going on. The idea of like these artificial beings become that advanced, to like summon them. That might actually be like these people that I'm talking about coming to like stop these civilizations from becoming too advanced, that they become a threat.
Right. I always like when you can find ways to work within the shared universe. Now,
the way that it all wraps up in the end is that because Captain Garza and his crew, because they are able to make friends with so many people, what they actually do is they rally the entire galaxy, and they're able to fight off these attackers from beyond our galaxy. And they are able to, they're also like using like old ancient Iconian weapons and stuff that they find and stuff like that they like retrofit to their ships. But there's kind of be like this big battle at like the very end of the final season. And what happens here is I want to see like basically like every Star Trek species come and like work together. And like even people who have been like assholes a lot. Like I want to see like not only like the Federation and Klingons and Romulans all together, but I also want to see like some Tholians there. We're gonna have Gorn there. We're gonna have some Jem'Hadar there. We're gonna have some Ferengi there. We're gonna have Cardassians there. I want to even have like the Kazon.
I
want to establish like the Borg kind of wiped out the Kazon at some point after Voyager, and they're kind of like all dead, except for like there's one Kazon still alive. He's the last one. And he's you remember when Aaron Eisenberg, who played Nog, also played that Kazon kid in Star Trek Voyager that Chakotay spent some time with?
Yep.
So this guy, he's not the grown-up version of him, because I think that's too incestuous. But he's a Kazon who was saved by that guy after that guy grew up. Because of some of the values Chakotay instilled in him.
Yeah.
This was the only Kazon who was spared from like the Borg genocide of the Kazon. Because everyone hates the Kazon. They kind of suck. The Borg didn't even want to assimilate them. They're like, you have nothing to offer the collective. We're just going to kill you. But this guy actually like kamikazes a ship into like the bad guy's ship and actually like helps turn the tide like this one's. Because I just love the idea of like because of the good things Chakotay did, it pays back like decades later.
I seem to remember that episode ended poised with the kind of the question of whether this kid was going to fall into the violent, sort of essentially sectarian fighting of the Kazon, or whether Chakotay might have been able to influence him. And so that's a very Roddenberry Starfleet kind of value.
And I also want to like
paying it forward.
It's the only way I can think to like redeem the Kazon because they're such a terrible concept. And like even a Borg cube, I want like the Borg to show up and be like, we're teaming up with the good guys.
Yeah.
But it's basically like it's not that the united firepower is enough to win the day, but it's actually these like monstrous beings from beyond our galaxy. They see like, hold up, hold your fire, stop, everyone stop. This has never happened before. It's always like one dominant force takes over the entire galaxy and we wipe them out because we're scared they're going to be a threat to us. We've never seen this where people go and instead of conquering their galaxy, they actually go and they team up with everyone. Where they're like, here's this really advanced technology, I'm going to share it with you so we can do this together. It's never happened before. We're going to stop, we're going to pull away, and we're going to study this galaxy because we're tired of all these millennia of fighting these other galaxy-spanning empires, and we might have something that we can learn from these people. And I guess from the Roddenberry values that the Federation is spreading throughout their entire galaxy. And that's why
like that.
The name of the show would be Star Trek Galaxy.
I like it. All coming together in the end in a way that you would not be able to anticipate probably from the early ones, other than the fact that they just seem to travel about the galaxy.
And that's pretty much all I have there. Just some of the choices I made, I put civilians on there, so maybe we could do like a story with like some of like these ambassadors' kids, because even though like people get annoyed with like Wesley Crusher and stuff, like Star Trek does do good stuff with kids sometimes. So like having like that option. I wanted to have Latasha on board because what I learned from DS9 is that it pays to have non-Starfleet characters as well. So there's certain story possibilities we can get from her that we wouldn't be able to have otherwise. But yeah, like the basic concept is that you could have like really cool self-contained episodes that also like build to this arc of figuring out what happened to the Takan Empire and the Iconians and all these species and what's going to happen to us if we don't stop it. And of course, this is the big event that Ensign Treadwell came to witness.
Right.
So like after the show, like he goes home, you'll see like these arcs pay off. I wanted to have like Tori, who was always kind of the insecure officer and became kind of like the asshole when she's in command. She actually learned Starfleet's not for her, and it's okay. She doesn't have to be the best at something. The show ends with like her and Latasha are just gonna go off and explore the galaxy and have fun, and she'll find her purpose in life doing something else. It's like I kind of have like ideas like finish the stories for a lot of these people, and I actually forgot the name of one of the characters. Let me scroll up and look at it. Lieutenant Rabe. She finds a nice Cardassian boy she falls in love with, and she's able to like get past her own self-hatred. And then I have some secondary characters. They don't have names, but we'll just like see them in the background. I guess they would have names in the show. I just didn't bother thinking any up. But do you remember the Binar species? They refitted the Enterprise computer in the Next Generation. The short little they had names like 0011 and 1101.
Sure.
But yeah, they work in engineering. I also have a Tellarite lady. She's the transporter chief. She's very cantankerous and grumpy. And she's like, oh, you always come beaming in and out of my transporter room when I'm trying to run these diagnostics. And the captain's like, oh, you know how she is.
I feel like a Tellarites, it is their time, I think, on Star Trek, because I think a a humorously written, like a bit of genuine wit to their kind of cantankerousness could be a lot of fun on a Star Trek show. So yeah, I'm not surprised that you and I both ended up with one in there.
Lieutenant Frost, his security team, he's going to have like a young Andorian woman and a young Bajoran male, because they're both like kind of militarized peoples at sometimes. Like a lot of the Bajorans fought the Cardassians, and the Andorians are a bit prickly and militaristic at times.
Sure.
I want to have like a male human nurse, because you don't see like a lot of like men nurses in media. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I got. And unless you have any questions, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Yeah, no, I think that covers it. This is interesting. Yours is kind of more of a, I'm going to say, a grand Star Trek kind of experience meant to kind of encapsulate much of the whole Star Trek ethos.
Because I knew you wouldn't do that. I knew you wouldn't want to do something big like that. So that's why I did it.
That's true. And mine is like a sort of more specialized, like subgenre of a show that we just haven't seen in Star Trek before, which is sort of medical, but I still want some Star Trek, traditional Star Trek elements like this grand mystery and and moral and ethical quandaries throughout. I like the variety within those two. I am anxious to see what other people will throw into the mix.
Yeah, but be sure to let us know, what you thought of mine and Dave's ideas, if you liked either one or if you hated either one.
Yeah, sure. I got I don't have a very thick skin. It's thick enough though if you're like I did not need ER in space.
I mean, it wasn't intended as a competition, but I guess if you want to tell us you liked one and hated another, then feel free to tell us.
Why would you say that, Fatheree? Why would you push them in that direction?
I wasn't pushing them. I was just saying, like, if you liked them or hated them, whatever, you can tell us.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
And let us know your ideas. Any way that you want to get that to us. We're actually thinking about, if we get some stuff submitted, we'd like to share those ideas. So we might podcast again and discuss all of that with y'all. Yeah,
for sure. I always like going over our audience mail, Twitter stuff, and Facebook messages and stuff. So this is an even deeper dive into that, into kind of the creativity out there in the audience, and I hope that people might share this around, and like we might hear from even some other podcasts and stuff too.
Yeah, we would love to hear other ideas, because it's a lot of fun to be creative, and it's more fun when you have people that want to hear your ideas. So that's what we're here for. We appreciate everyone who listened to us, and we're ready to listen to anything that you might have. But Dave, I think we're going to go ahead and sign off on that. But we will return. I do not know when, but we'll be back as soon as we have something to talk about. There's not a lot of new Star Trek news right now because of the pandemic delaying a lot of things, and there's no new content. We are thinking about doing some more Deep Space Nine conversations. We might do a season 2 podcast sometime soon. We'd also like to talk some animated Star Trek stuff before Lower Decks come out. If there's anything you want to hear us talk about, though, you can always let us know. And we'll catch you next time. Until then, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fatheree on Twitter at txtrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.